Anyone know what that is? That's music to my ears. That's another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling shirts or sandals, start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. With Shopify, you'll customize your online store to your brand, discover new customers, and build relationships that will keep them coming back. Shopify covers all the sales channels to successfully grow your business, from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks to 24/7 support and free on-demand business courses, Shopify is here to help you succeed every step of the way. It's how every minute new sellers around the world make their first sale with Shopify. And you can do it too. I love how Shopify makes it simple for anyone to sell their products anywhere. Whether they're ebooks or earrings, Shopify simplifies starting and running your own successful business. When you're ready to take your idea to the world, do it with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Now it's your turn to try Shopify for free and start selling anywhere. So sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/C-Suite, all lowercase on C-Suite. Go to shopify.com/C-Suite, all lowercase on C-Suite to start selling online today. Shopify.com/C-Suite.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where today I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend, Friska. Friska transforms organisations to enable them to better respond to the changing environments. She's worked for some of the biggest names in mining, engineering and technology. She's a change and transformation expert with over a decade's experience, leading change programmes that influenced up to 23,000 people over 6 of the 7 continents, and specialises in that digital transformation. But I think for me, the bit that I love about Friska, amongst many things, is the fact that she absolutely understands the importance of taking the people on the journey. And her transformational journeys are always about enabling that people and culture change. So Friska, welcome.
Thanks, Kim. It's so great to be here.
Oh, it's so fab to have you along. It's always such a delight to chat to you. I always find so much insight in actually how do we really help people make change? Because change is pretty much the only thing that's a constant, isn't it? It's like it's the only thing that's pretty much guaranteed, and yet it's the thing that we are often the most fearful of. So can you tell us a bit about your journey so far, please?
Yeah, so let's see, I've been doing this for about a decade, and what I've found that over the years, I've noticed that really when it comes to like inciting change, especially in an organization, the 3 C's have to be present, and that is the communication. It needs to be ongoing, regular, honest, and transparent at all levels. The second C is the culture. So if the culture is not favorable to risk-taking and innovation, that you're not going to get that change. Like change doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens by good design and planning. And lastly is the capability. Like if we don't help our people get ready for change, we can't expect them to change. So it's like when we first learned to drive a car, right? We didn't get in the car and start driving straight away. We had the theory, we put in 100, 200 hours of practice, and we kept on going until it feels natural. Now we don't even think about putting the key in the ignition, putting the car into gear. The same with change. We leaders often get frustrated that it doesn't happen immediately, but it doesn't work like that. You need to give your employees the mind space to, first of all, learn the knowledge that they need to change, and then translate that knowledge to ability.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? Because when you're leading some of those changes, it tends to be the bit that gets missed. They think about how that digital transformation is going to make the processes easier, the systems going to perhaps improve the experience for the customer. But we don't always plan in for the fact that actually change is uncomfortable. We've got to. I was doing it this way for so long, and to your point on the drive in the car, I do it unconsciously that way now because I've been doing it for so long, and now you're going to make me think about it. Well, that's always a bit harder and a bit more tiring when you've got to think before you do, because you're very conscious about it, haven't you? So it must be, you know, and you see so many, don't you, transformation programs that don't transform, that don't actually ever embed.
The failure rate is startlingly high. It's about 86%, and for digital transformation it's even higher. Their success rates are only in the single digits, anywhere from 3 to 8%, depending on the type of research that you need. And I think a lot of it is driven by the fact that most leadership and executives put all their eggs in one basket, and that is they're focusing on the tool. But the tool is only as powerful as the people who are ultimately going to use it. So it's a one-sided investment. It's not going to work, you know?
Yeah. It's true, isn't it? Because, you know, we might have all done it. I'm going to own up. Yeah, we go and buy that amazing gadget for the kitchen that's going to save so much time, and then we find ourselves using the knife we've always used, and it just gathers dust in the cupboard. Possibly a bad analogy, but it's true in life, isn't it? Is that we do these things, go, oh my God, that's going to be amazing, but you're like, oh, it's just too much effort to take out, plug in, and fit together. I just do this. It's much faster, and that's what happens often when we do these big change transformations. So, tell us a bit about your journey and what got you into doing change.
I was in California at the time, so I'd won a scholarship to study at USC. And a professor that I really looked up to, he'd spent his entire career consulting to Fortune 500 companies, flying all around the world. And I thought that's what I wanted. I thought, oh my God, that's so exciting. It's so glamorous, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, how do I get to where you are? And he said, you know, go get your MBA, cut your teeth in management consulting, you know, work hard and work your way up. That's what I did. Off I went, got my MBA, cut my teeth in management consulting. But the shine got tarnished pretty quickly, and I felt like it was the same problem, just in a different packaging, and so I wasn't challenged anymore, and each project kind of felt like the same. I came back to Australia after a few years abroad, and at that time change management was starting to be recognized as an actual discipline, not just fluffy comms and training. And it really intrigued me, and it played to my strengths, you know, the developing rapport and trust, engaging stakeholders, critical analysis. I thought, oh, this is interesting. I want to learn more about this. And so I took a leap of faith. I took a 40% pay cut to start from nothing, start as a change analyst. I shadowed an experienced change manager, and I just worked my way up with unwavering dedication and laser-like focus. And fast forward 7 years later, I was the youngest head of change for the biggest gold miner in the Southern Hemisphere. And since then, I've done changes of all shapes and sizes, mergers and acquisitions, restructures, process reengineering. Digital transformation is my bread and butter. And so it was about throwing myself in the deep end. You know, I've done some of the most challenging projects with most resistant people. You know, I've had stakeholders about 10 centimeters from my face yelling at me full pelt because they were losing their car parking privileges as part of this change. So I've seen it all, done it all, and I've got a pretty thick skin, and that's got me to where I am today.
I love it. I'm sorry, I was only laughing at the car park piece because some of my most challenging conversations over the years haven't been about the things I expected to be challenging. They've been around the car parking space, or once the fact that you're in the middle of a massive compliance crisis where we were potentially as a bank going to lose our license. I had spent 45 minutes talking to somebody about why the vending machine had overcharged them by a penny. I was like,
oh my God,
go get you a penny. And I know it's really important to you and I need to give you my time, but really, like right now, it's but
oh
it's
my God, the amount of and this is another reason why it's really important to get to know your stakeholders. So stakeholder analysis is a key fundamental step when you're conducting a change impact assessment. Like the number of meetings and lost productivity hours that have been caused by a seemingly small change. So I remember it was a cost-cutting exercise for a very large mining company. They decided no more biscuits in the staff lunchroom. Holy moly, that caused like a flurry of activity and gossiping and, you know, feelings that they're not being valued. So yeah, it may be a small change in your eyes, but that small change, someone makes it mean something else to them. And that's why you get this resistance. So, yeah.
I love that. That's so true, isn't it? Because as human beings, we think we're very logical beings, but we're not. We're very emotional, and our emotional brains respond 24 times faster. So very often what happens is, instead of responding to what's happening, we respond to what we've made it mean. So factually, we just stopped getting biscuits. What we've made it mean is that they no longer value us. They don't like us anymore. We're suddenly having our privileges taken away.
Yeah.
And that's what we end up dealing with. And I think that's one of the challenges in leadership and in change, isn't it? Is that actually you're trying to deal with facts and everybody else is dealing with what it makes them mean. And they're the bits that you can't always plan for if you've not done the due diligence of getting somebody like you in to help plan for the communication that needs to happen, and transparency of saying, we're doing this, but don't make it mean that, because it doesn't. It just means this, and this is what we're looking at doing. So what would you say in your journey so far has been your proudest moment?
Let's see. I would say one of the most challenging projects that I had, it was not about the number of people, but the actual scale of change. So it was a lift and shift, so a relocation of about 600 employees. Typical public sector mentality, very ingrained, as you can imagine. And it had changes of everything. So not only was it a physical relocation, new technology, new security, new branding, new CEO who was a bit of a hard taskmaster. And what happened was their current office building was decrepit. It was really old, built in the 1950s. It was going to get demolished to make way for a 5-star hotel. And their new premises were brand new, but inconvenient, about 20 kilometers away from the CBD, and not a lot of routes for public transport. And it was just really, really challenging because we were the 5th consultant in the door, and also their leaders didn't own their role in helping their teams through this change. They kind of used the consultants as a bit of a shield. If they didn't want to answer the tough questions, they would leave it to us. Yeah. And, and some people were losing their offices as well. So it was a shift to open plan living. So yeah, changes of all shapes and sizes. Long story short, had no budget, and rumors were circling such as, oh, it's really unsafe to take public transport to the new place. The building's not going to be very good. There's nothing around there. And with no budget means you have to get creative as a consultant. So what did I do? I went over there and I went to every single business in that vicinity. And because it was a new development, they were so excited for this new government department to relocate there. And so I got donations from all of them. It was simple things like coffee vouchers, pens, calendars, vouchers for laundry, things like that, free calendars from the local council, got goodie bags. And then I also negotiated with the Public Transport Authority to get discounted transport cards. And I literally felt like a tour guide, and I orchestrated the whole damn thing, took 20 of them at one time with me. And I literally taught some of these people to take a train. They had never taken public transport in their life. So I was like, swipe on, get in, swipe off, and when we got there, they were just surprised because there was this big event organized just for them. There was catering, there was the goodie bags. I got the tech team to talk to them about the new technology. I had the security guy to talk them about the specifics of the building. And they were like kids in a candy store. And when they came back to the old office, the positive news spread like wildfire. And those who were really resistant and against it, they were no longer loud and proud. And I think it was a week later, what really meant a lot was one of them came up to me and he was nearing retirement. And he said, oh, Friska, I was so excited after our trip last week. I took my granddaughter for the first time ever on the train into town and she loved it, So it's like the little things like that like shift, decades old mentality. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And what an amazing thing to then have him go and recreate that memory with his granddaughter. That's amazing. I remember taking my little girl the first time on public transport, and she was like mesmerized. Whereas we got on and we're like, oh.
Oh, the bloody tube again.
I want to get off, but you forget to look at it with the wonder of a child, don't you? Where they're like, "Mummy, look, everything like whizzes past," and you're like, which is cool. So what would you say? So I mean, that was great, and I can imagine how proud you were to turn an organization from being so resistant to the change to embracing it and actually making it part of their everyday is amazing. But on the counter side, there must have been some things where you go, oh, I wish I'd done that differently. That was a real lesson for me. What was your biggest lesson?
My biggest lesson would be having the difficult conversations with leaders who aren't picking up the slack and doing their part in breathing life into this change. Like me as the change professional, I set the conditions for adoption to thrive. I do the stakeholder analysis. I do the resistance. I identify resistance hotspots. But it's you as leaders. That's why you make the big bucks. You actually have to put your big boy pants and big girl shoes on and actually help me manage the resistance, because people look up to you. Employees look up to their leaders, and they get their signals by what you prioritize. So if you don't place importance in this, then your people won't either. So yeah, there's a culture change program which went pear-shaped, because it lost support. And it lost support because A, leaders weren't owning it, and B, very unrealistic expectations. So they were expecting the culture to change in less than 6 months. Multinational, 13,000 employees. It's not going to happen in 6 months. Yeah.
Well, it takes time, doesn't it? People look for that. I remember many years ago going to work for an organisation, and it wasn't until things went wrong that the culture really changed. So I'd gone in and was very fortunate. We were hitting our numbers, then we got into growth, and everything was going really well. And it wasn't until we hit, I have to share this story, we hit August. So in July, it was going that well. My boss was like, you might need to slow down, Kim. It's like, you're going to make next year really hard. So I was like, I'll take them all out on a CSR event. We've never done that. I'll do it in September. Then we fell off a cliff in August. It was horrendous. In fact, we amalgamated August and September and called them Augtember. We could pull it back. And that was the moment that it changed. I remember talking to the guys and saying, can you tell me why it changed? They went, well, up until this, you seemed very nice. You seemed like you were really consistent. You listened to us, you understood, but nothing had gone wrong for you. So we were like, let's just see what happens when she's actually got a real challenge. And then when you were hit with that challenge and when you fell off the number, but you remained consistently who you were, you didn't change what you were saying, you didn't change the priorities, you kind of just went, no, we're doing the right thing, we've just got to keep going, and we've got to look for the opportunities to change, that we believe that actually this is who you are and this is how you lead. At that point they really bought in, but you were like, it's a disaster almost to get them to realize that this is how you are. And I think that's the thing with culture, isn't it? People want to see how it pans out under pressure as much as how it pans out when things are going smoothly.
That's right. Yeah. And to your point about consistency, the more consistent you are in your behavior, if you're exhibiting the right change leadership behaviors, the faster you're going to get there, the faster that culture is going to change. But if one day, you say you value integrity, all these values, and then a week later they see you acting contradictory to those, that's just going to undermine all the credibility, all the hard work that change professionals have done in the background, because people aren't going to believe it. They're just going to roll their eyes and say, yeah, I've seen this all before. Let's see how long this lasts. And that is exactly what happened.
Yeah. And it's true, isn't it? I go into organizations like you, and the amount I go into that go, oh, we've got a culture problem, we'll go and speak to HR. And I'm like, I'm not being funny, love. If you've got a culture problem, you need to look in the mirror. You are your culture. So it's not doing what you want it to do. You have to look here first, because what are you doing or saying or allowing others to do and say that is contradicting the culture that you want to have happen? Because that's where it's, you can't just outsource it and have somebody do it for you. You have to own it, don't you?
Yeah.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge you're seeing in the sector right now?
I really think it's the absorption and the meaning making of new information. So I was reading an Australian Institute of Management study, and our ability to get data, internalize it, and understand it is 50% less than pre-pandemic levels.
Wow.
That is huge.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most organizations think, oh, the answer to that is more communication. Like, no, that's not the answer. Like, we are time poor. We are bombarded with content. Deadlines are looming. The pressure to achieve more with less has never been higher. It's not about more communication. It's actually about better communication and better active listening. And this is something that doesn't happen enough. Very often, a leader sends an email, forwards a report and says, I've communicated. That's it. My job's done. It's like, no, it's you need to engage in a dialogue, not a one-sided monologue. So that's the biggest challenge, getting that cut through when the airwaves have never been noisier than ever before.
Oh, that's so true, isn't it? It reminds me when I was just talking to you of that old saying, and forgive me, I can never remember who said it, but it might have been Mark Twain. I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one.
Yes.
Is that actually, how do you distill? I'm just going to throw a whole 10-page report at you instead of saying the bits I really need you to understand. Are these
and we weren't taught this, right? We weren't taught this in schools. Like throughout my undergrad, my MBA, it was report writing, discussions, position papers, not short and sharp emails. No, that was never taught. So this is a skill that we have to unlearn and relearn for the 21st century.
It's so true. I remember many years ago working at RBS, and they were actually really good at this, in that if you had to write a paper for the board, you were allowed 7 slides. Just 7.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to do an entire strategy update, you were allowed 11, no more. So if you couldn't get it, and you weren't allowed to do font 8, it had to be readable.
Yeah.
You'd spend hours on it. You'd have like a 50-deck pack that you were trying to condense into these 7 that actually told them what they absolutely needed to know. But it was a great skill in saying, actually, I'll condense this. I'll have read the 50 pages. It's still there. If you need to dig into any detail, we've got it. But actually, I'm going to tell you what I think it means and what I'm asking you to do as a result of it, or what I'm asking for you to, what recommendation I want you to accept, or whatever those parts are. But you're right. We've got bombarded, haven't we? I think in that need to stay connected, we kind of started communicating more, but in reality we're communicating less, because all we're doing is putting a lot of noise out there. So we're not checking the understanding, we're not checking if it's landed, we're not even checking if people have taken away from the conversation what we put in. It's like a giant game of digital Chinese whispers, isn't it? That's going on, where we kind of like go, well, I thought he meant this. I've wandered off. So what advice could you give to people on how can they unlearn that, just bombard people, and instead start effectively communicating?
The first of all is know who you're communicating with and know what their preferences are. Some people are detail oriented. Some people prefer pictures. Some people prefer reports. So the better you know your stakeholder, the more likely you are to be able to communicate with them effectively. Become aware of basic slide hygiene. For example, one of my rules, never more than 8 words in a sentence on a slide and 3 bullet points, and be ruthless with that. And for me, if I'm providing a lot of context and I know someone's going to get overwhelmed, I end the communication with the one thing that I want them to do. So it's like, if you take away anything from this communication, it's that this has happened and I want you to do this by this date. So being clear is being kind. And really be ruthless with your word count. If you can say something in 2 sentences instead of 6, then do it. And trying to sound like a dictionary, thinking that it makes you sound intelligent, it doesn't. You just sound like an arrogant jerk. Like, use simple, clear language that people can understand and cotton on, because our processing power has been diminished greatly. So the easier you make it to understand, the more likely it is your message will stick.
I love that. Such great advice. And it's true. I think, I think there was some research, and I can't remember who did the research, that says that the average reading age that we like to read at, not that we can, we can read at much greater.
Yeah.
The average age we'd like to read at is the age of 12 to 14. It's easy to understand. We can absorb it. We know what it's saying. And that's what they're now teaching it as a skill. I think Einstein used to say, if you can't explain it to me like I was 6, you don't know it well enough. I always have that in my head whenever I'm trying to think about the communication, not to think that the people I'm communicating to are 6, but that piece that says actually it puts the onus on the communicator to make it understandable, to make it to make it absorbable, and to allow them then to actually do it. Because I've spent a lot of time in corporate life and got told I didn't have the vocabulary or the gravitas, so I had to go and learn a new one, and I did. And then I realised the people I was communicating to, my people didn't understand me anymore, because I'd be there, I've got a plethora of ideas. And they were like, what? There's lots of them. Or what's that? Well, you don't work from the office. Like, couldn't you just say that? Yeah, I could. So I had to unlearn all of that, because you're right, it just made me look pretentious, albeit it was what I was driven to do, because that was deemed to be what you needed to get on. And I think we're kind of unlearning that as the world's moving on, isn't it? And saying, actually, if you want to get on, you want to be authentically you. And you want to make sure that the people that you're talking to understand what it is that you're trying to explain to them, what it means to them, and what next. What's that call to action? Where do they go, isn't it?
Yeah, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And for me, when I'm leading change programs, I always check for understanding, but not in a, so do you get what I said? Not like that, but in a fun, gamified way. So I use surveys, polls. People love it. Like, they love to, and you make it funny. So it's like a game for them, and it really helps with the memory retention.
I love that. Great advice. So if you could go back and give the younger Friska some advice, what do you know now that you wish you'd known then?
Blood is not always thicker than water, and to cherish your friends and your peers, because they are the family that you wish you were born with, and really nurture those friendships and relationships. Yeah, don't let them wither on the vine.
That's so true, isn't it? Remembering to nurture the relationships that are around us, and we end up with some amazing friendships as a result of those. And I think it's going back, isn't it? If you realize that you have not spoken to somebody for a while, don't use it as a reason to not speak to them now. Go back and say, John, I realize I've not chatted to you for a while. I'd like to make amends, because we all have those moments, don't they, where somebody pops into our head. And I always think that's our gut telling us we're supposed to go and say hello, not just. They stay there, don't they? They come back up a couple of days later, and you're like, why are they in my head? Why can't I? And sometimes they're the best relationships to rekindle. Yeah, I love it. So what's next for you?
Now that everything's open again, face-to-face events are back on. So I've got quite a large workshop at the end of this month for women in construction and engineering. Yeah, this will be my first one in 3 years. That's face-to-face. And then I've got a talk at Women at Google coming up here in Sydney. So looking to get out there more.
Fantastic. And I know both events will be amazing. Friska, you have been a delight. I could always chat to you all day. It's always so insightful. We will definitely have to have you back on. But in the interim, how do people get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So just search for me, Friska, surname Wirya, and you can find my contact details there. So follow me, add me, send me a message. Would love to chat further about all things change.
Fantastic. It's been a delight as always. I will make sure that all your contact details are in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing your journey so far. And I look forward to chatting to you again really soon.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.